So, let's close the door. Hello, and welcome back to the F12 TDF. Granted, under circumstances I didn't expect until this time next year. So I'll be straight up front here. When I originally bought this car, I did sort of lay out for myself a 3-year ownership plan. Own it for 3 years, enjoy it, and then come 2021, the chances are there'd be other cars and other things to move on to and enjoy. Now, I'm just going to highlight 3 key points of which I'm about to touch on as to the reasons why this car is going now, and then I shall give you another walk and talk around this remarkable vehicle while splicing in some of the adventures that I've had along the way. But yes, as the title of this video would suggest, my Ferrari F12 TDF is officially for sale. We're here at DK Engineering. James Cottingham is taking care of the sale. It was actually one of the earliest videos that I filmed with this car, was bringing it here to DK to film alongside an original TDF. So yeah, special memories all round with this car. But let's first of all touch on these 3 points. First of all, the car this year cannot be used as intended for obvious reasons. We've had COVID-19 fallout and it has dramatically affected the plans to do with 2020, which I shall explain shortly. Number 2, there are some substantial projects which were supposed to be announced by now, but COVID-19 has affected those as well. They will be coming soon, but they also will require some funding. If any of you guys were following the channel around about the same time that I launched NVN London, I'm in a very similar situation now. There's big projects coming, some things have to go in order for some things to arrive. And then third of all, which I haven't shared with you at this moment in time, is there are multiple cars on order. Some will be arriving this year, and one in the future, which is the Koenigsegg Gemera. All in all, it's coming down to cash and actual time to use this thing. Now, let's go back to point number 1. 2020 was supposed to be year of the TDF. Dare I say it, there was plans for this to go on an aeroplane and go to faraway lands, similar to what I did with the 458 Speciale to Dubai. Chances are I was actually planning on taking it to Dubai as well as other parts of the world. Certainly planning on doing a couple of pretty substantial European road trips. All of this was inspired off the back of the Targa Florio rally, which I did with the car in 2019, and drove around Sicily and then the width of Sicily to drive this up the active volcano that is Mount Etna. That to this day is my favorite drive with this car. And in light of this now being for sale, I'm so thankful that I had that experience. It was just magic. I'm going to splice in some footage of that now, because that is the trip that really made this car come to life and really highlighted just what this magical engine and drivetrain and platform is all about. Don't forget, despite the fact that this is super rare, they only made 799 of them in the UK, definitely sub 100 cars, certainly right-hand drive. And that out of the way, it's built on the F12 platform, which is a Grand Tourer platform. So it still has practical and huge boot. I mean, myself and Huck, who joined me on that trip, we had bags for a week, camera gear, photography gear, even drone, and it all fitted it in here as we traversed our way and rallied and raced our way through Sicily on that adventure. So that was a very cool experience, but more so it highlighted the true road racing nature of this car. Those of you guys who have followed the journey of this from day one will know how I bang on about the extraordinary relationship between the engine and gearbox. Naturally aspirated V12, 770 horsepower to the rear wheels, but the calibration between this twin clutch gearbox and that naturally aspirated V12 is a slice of the automotive holy grail. It's just incredible. The way that it goes down through the gears under heavy braking, it's an explosion every single time. It's such a magical feeling. But that brings me back around to, I won't really be able to enjoy those sensations that much this year. Now, I could keep this car in England and I could, do a few videos in the UK, but I've always used this for special occasions and larger adventures. This car is all about memories per mile. That, for me, is what it's all about. And I haven't driven this car properly this year, this entire year. I used it for the opening of the bunker launch video at Bicester Heritage. That's it. It hasn't been on the road at all. And we are almost 6 months into this year. And when I look at the automotive layout for 2020, it's looking pretty bleak in terms of opportunities to use the TDF as I intended, and that was majoritively abroad. So yeah, it's sad. This was supposed to go next year, not this year, but you don't need me to tell you that circumstances have changed out there. And I just think it would make sense for me to not have this amount of money tied up in a car, which I'm sadly not using as intended this year. Secondly, projects. There's some really substantial projects. I'm super excited. Dare I say it, they are as large, if not larger, than NVN London. And those were supposed to be announced by now. Of course, the complications with COVID-19 have set that back as well. However, they have developed and grown to an extent where my heart is bought into it so much that I want to do those justice. And as per the move to sell my 458 Speciale a few years ago to fund the launch of NVN, this is part of that for the next wave of what I'm doing. And I'm very excited to share that with you. So that'll be cool. And then lastly, cars on order. Now, one, potentially, in fact, two of those cars, which I shall keep my cards close to my chest on that one for now, will be arriving this year. One actually, maybe in the next 2 months, hopefully. So yes, new cars are coming. But the big one, of course, is the Koenigsegg Gemera. Now, that car is some time off yet, but it is very much in the works. And to not be able to enjoy this car and have cash tied up in it doesn't really make sense when there'll be payments for that car. The theme here, time and money. The good thing is the pivot from the F12 TDF to the things on coming for me is just the next stage. It's the next stop on the journey, and it's going to facilitate fresh blood and new life into the world and brand of Mr. JWW that I cannot wait to share with you soon. So stay peeled on the channel. Big things coming. I think we should now take you for a walk and talk around this car of the specs and individual features that make this thing so special. Okay, so here we are in the iconic DK Engineering courtyard, and here sits my Ferrari F12 TDF. As mentioned in the beginning, this is one of the first destinations which I actually stopped at with this car a couple of years ago. Never did I think at the time that it would be the last. Now let's just run over some of the specs, starting with the more custom features which I applied to this car, albeit still factory options. So this is one of the very few right-hand drive cars which has the titanium fuel filler cap. Now, I had that upgraded from the dealer when I bought the car, because on the outside, the other metal hardware is also titanium. Take, for example, these wheel bolts here. These are all titanium. Also, the color of titanium versus the aluminium, which is the fuel filler cap that it comes with as standard, actually has a more dramatic contrast than you might think. So as an aluminium fuel cap, that would normally stand out as a really sort of bright, contrasting hardware. But now that it's sort of toned down, being titanium, I just think it ties it in nicely with the rest of the theme of the car. Also, not just aesthetically, but the ethos of this car. Don't forget, the idea of this car is that it is a lighter weight road racer version of the F12. Of course, titanium, even though it's a tip of the hat to it on the fuel filler cap, it is a nod to the fact that this is a special lightweight car. 110 kilograms, in fact, lighter than your standard F12 with 770 horsepower. This thing is remarkable. It was also one of the first Ferraris to be developed with rear wheel steering. That is in part to the fact that Ferrari fitted 275 section front tyres. That is a chunky set of rubber to fit to the front of any car. But because the front end now grips in with such force, Ferrari ended up developing rear wheel steer for it, which effectively allowed it to turn in and handle much better, because otherwise it had a tendency to step out on you like the standard F12 did. Now, I remember when the standard F12 launched, there was news and rumours that that car was somewhat of a handful, and you would be forgiven for thinking that because this car is more powerful and even lighter, that it would be even more of a handful. Actually, the way that this car has been developed by LaFerrari is incredible. I actually find a lot more confidence and stability from this car as a result of wider, stickier tyres and rear wheel steering to be much more stable and enjoyable than a standard F12. Now then, while we're around the back, let me just talk to you about the exhaust note on this car. Very few cars which I drive, I think, don't need some sort of exhaust augmentation. The F12 TDF is one of the finest sounding naturally aspirated V12s I have ever heard, both inside and out. One of the great things is because Ferrari were saving weight, a big part of that was to strip out sound deadening from the car, and as a result, it doesn't matter if you're inside, outside, head out of the window, however you want to drive this thing, that resonance, that incredible scream from 9,000 revs of a naturally aspirated V12 come through to your ear holes no matter what's happening. The fantastic thing about it is it also sounds amazing when you're going slow, and that was always a problem with the standard F12. It wasn't unless you were on the ragged edge right up there in the sort of high rev ranges that it sounded good. This thing sounds like you're in a race car even when you're going steady, which allows you to enjoy it at road speeds, and that's a really tricky thing to master from a factory fitted exhaust system. So that's probably one of my favorite features of the car. Now when we get in closer, we've got exposed carbon all around here, massive. The carbon diffuser is huge, and we have this Formula One inspired rear fog light there with inbuilt reverse camera, and the black band across the top with the Prancing Horse logo as well is also carbon fibre, and pretty much everything on the outside that's black is carbon. So we have the extended sill here, that's also in carbon, and of course this aero bridge. In fact, this whole wing here is carbon. They just stop painting there so you can see it as an exposed piece. It's very, very cool stuff. Now I actually had the tyres upgraded to Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's. Reason being that this is one of Michelin's latest tyres. It's just a better all-round tyre. The technology which is advanced versus the standard tyre that the F12 TDF comes on, it's just allowed for so much more grip. I noticed under acceleration it had more bite, it's better in the cold, it's better in the wet, and it took me a while to fit them because Michelin took their time to develop a PS4S specifically rated for the F12 TDF. These aren't just any tyres I've stuck on, they are specific to this car. I also have available the original tyres for it as well, which I shall be dropping off here at DK Engineering. So you'll have two sets of tyres, and the other one is the original factory fitted pair. Working our way around to the front, this was a heavily optioned car. Also have matte carbon housing inside the headlights. Beautiful details I think you really need to spend some time around in order to appreciate. Now that's probably the majority of features on the outside. Of course we have contrast black wheels, that was a optional extra from factory. Probably the most iconic styling feature of the F12 TDF from the outside is these vents above the rear wheel arches there. These are very iconic styling cues, synonymous with special DNA of a very special lineage of cars. So yeah, fantastic to have those on the outside. Now then, outside's probably covered. Let's head on inside and I shall show you some features because as much as you think there's carbon on the outside, you gotta check out the inside. Inside is fantastic because all of the carbon is matte carbon. Every single surface that isn't otherwise coated in Alcantara is matte carbon. Full sculpture on the dash. If I just point you across the wheel, look, the wheel is all matte carbon. Dashboard continues everywhere, and when you're inside, the sculpture as a result of it being matte just pops off beautifully. Theme inside here, timeless, iconic red contrast stitching across Alcantara, with the only piece of leather on the seats is this central stripe here, which runs essentially down the seat. If I can just show you the back of the seats, they are a work of art. Look at that, matte carbon sculpture across the whole of the back of the seat. It's just incredible. These as well, despite the fact that these are the lightweight carbon-backed sports seats, for grand touring they're incredible, and it also has the optional extra of the driver's height adjustment here. So that just pumps the seat up and down. You can access the rear parcel shelf here, which is also trimmed with matte carbon fibre. And then between the two seats, we have the plaque indicating that it's one of 799 limited edition cars. I want to show you the boot. The boot is absolutely ridiculous. You wouldn't think that a car of this performance has this size boot, but let's just head in there and I'll show you what's what. Hopefully, actually, there might be some bags in here as a demo. Okay, so got my camera bag in here. Might not look huge at first. However, this whole, I mean, look at this just quickly. This whole shelf is carbon. Now this shelf not only opens up, so you can see extra space in there. We also have the original Ferrari trickle charger in here, but this whole shelf you can take out. If you don't want to take it out, you can lift it up like so, and you can see straight through there. So if you had anything longer to put through, you can. But when you take this shelf out like so, the size, look at the size of that boot. It is absolutely huge. So I know people who have fitted 2 golf bags in here with clubs and extras. You can easily fit them there. Yeah, it's a serious, look at the size of it. It's this big carbon cave. So yes, that can come out. It's quite deep here. You've got Alcantara straps here to strap down anything that you don't want to slam through into the front. If you suddenly start driving spiritedly, I'm not aware of any other car really that has this amount of aggression on one side and then this amount of practicality on the other. It's a truly special thing if you fancy grand touring. One other feature that I haven't spoken about with regards to the gearbox. Now, and this is only something that you'll ever experience if you get to actually drive a car, or if you spent time in any other Ferrari other than the F12 TDF. Race generally kind of makes things sound a bit louder and gear shift sometimes a bit quicker. In this car, race, it's unlike any other gearbox I've ever tried. It shifts as fast as a twin clutch box, but with the aggression and certainty of a single clutch box. So when you pull on that paddle, you still get a very, very quick shift, but you get this very reassuring and incredibly gratifying thump through the whole transmission. It feels amazing. The up and down shifts in race, it's just the most addictive thing ever. I'm not sure of any other brand who has managed to make a twin clutch gearbox feel as engaging in that mode, and that's the beauty of it. You can switch back to sport and you can drive it just like a standard F12. You stick it into race, the remap and the recalibration of all these systems just make it feel an entirely different animal. An animal is actually the word. This thing is a monster through and through in race. Put it back down into sport. I don't know if you would, but you could daily this car. Going back to, as I was speaking about earlier, it is ultimately based on an F12 and people daily those. So if you wanted to, you could. Yeah, remarkable thing. Also on the dash, we have the optional passenger display here, which shows you things like how fast you're going and how quickly you can scare your passenger. We also have the carbon control stalk here. This is before putting it into launch control, automatic and reverse. Once again, despite the fact that this car is somewhat of an animal, putting it into auto smooths out gears. You could easily drive it around town slowly in auto. It's a super sophisticated thing when you want it to be. So yes, there you have it. Now that was a sort of brief overview from me on the highlights of the car. DK Engineering, there's a link below to their website with the full write-up and some fantastic photos and also some videos from me to accompany it. Let me know in the comments below. I know there's going to be a good proportion of you going, what are you doing? For me, it's just brought the original plan of this car 12 months earlier due to the fact that I cannot use this car as I believe it should be used on this channel. Next year, there's big plans. This year, there's big plans. There's new cars coming. There's a Koenigsegg Gemera coming. Things need to move, things need to progress, and rest assured, there's some very exciting new things in the pipeline, which I cannot wait to share with you soon. As always, thank you so much for watching. I shall see you next time. Ciao.